Ethan Cole had always felt like a misplaced puzzle piece in his own family, a family that thrived on noise, laughter, and endless social gatherings. While they danced through life like a grand celebration, Ethan preferred the quiet corners, the silent hum of a coffee shop, and the solitude of late nights spent sketching buildings no one else could see. The Cole family was well known in town for their lavish parties. Their home, situated in the heart of the neighborhood, was always lit up, filled with laughter and lively conversations. Henry Cole, Ethan's father, was a successful businessman with a booming voice that could be heard from across the street. His mother, Margaret, was warm and welcoming, always ensuring that no one ever felt alone, except, perhaps, Ethan himself. As a child, when other kids played in the backyard, Ethan would sit inside, sketching futuristic buildings in his notebook. When the family raised their glasses in celebration, he would quietly slip away, seeking a moment of silence. "You're the odd one out, Ethan," his mother would often say with a playful chuckle. But Ethan didn't mind. He wanted a life where he truly belonged, and he knew that life didn't exist within the endless parties and celebrations of his family. Ethan always knew that to find the peace he longed for, he had to leave. So when he received his acceptance letter to a prestigious university on the West Coast, he didn't hesitate. It was the perfect chance to escape the endless parties, forced social interactions, and find a place where he truly belonged. Arriving in the new city felt like stepping into another world. There were no noisy gatherings, no expectations to fit in. Here, he could exist on his own terms, without judgment. His first apartment was small but tidy, decorated in neutral tones with only the essentials. He spent most of his time in the library or in quiet coffee shops, sketching for hours without interruptions. Influenced by his mother, Ethan once dressed in bright, cheerful colors, but now his wardrobe had shifted to muted tones, black, gray, deep blue, colors that finally felt like him. As he connected with fellow architecture enthusiasts, Ethan realized he was growing in ways he never could back home. He was no longer the odd one out in the Cole family. Here, he was simply himself. 4 years of college passed in the tranquility he had always craved. Looking back, Ethan believed he had finally escaped his family's shadow. He thought he would never have to return. But life has a way of changing even the things we think are certain. Ethan never thought he'd return to the town he grew up in, but when a top architecture firm offered him the position of lead designer for a major project, he couldn't refuse. It was a rare career opportunity, a significant step forward that he had worked years to achieve. However, the thought of being back near his family made him hesitate. Ethan didn't want to be pulled back into his old life, the endless parties, the social gatherings that exhausted him. So instead of moving back home, he rented a small apartment in the town center, close enough to maintain a connection, but far enough to avoid getting caught up in their lively world. He thought he could keep his distance, but in a small town like this, avoidance wasn't an option. One morning, Ethan woke up with a severe stomach ache. With no other choice, he reluctantly visited his Uncle Mark's clinic. He planned to get in and out quickly, but while waiting for the elevator in the office building, a rushed voice called out behind him, "Wait, please hold the door." On instinct, Ethan reached out to stop the doors from closing. A young woman stepped in, her brown hair slightly tousled, her amber eyes bright with gratitude. "Thank you. I thought I was going to be stuck outside," she said, slightly out of breath. Ethan only nodded, but there was something about her that made it impossible to look away. As the elevator started moving, it suddenly shook violently before coming to a halt. The lights flickered for a few seconds before cutting out completely, leaving only the dim glow of their phones. Ethan felt his heart rate pick up, but the woman beside him seemed far more panicked. No way," she murmured, gripping the railing tightly. Without thinking, Ethan placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, his voice calm. "It's okay, I'll call for help." Gradually, as they talked to distract themselves, Ethan learned her name was Isabelle Carter. She was a book editor, new to town for work. She loved reading, exploring small cafes, and disliked crowded places. Things that sounded a lot like him. But unlike Ethan, Isabella had a warmth, an energy, and a way of speaking that effortlessly drew him in. 2 hours passed as they laughed and talked like old friends. When the elevator finally opened, they were swept apart by the crowd, and before Ethan could ask for her number, she was gone. But the image of her lingered in his mind. Ethan couldn't stop thinking about Isabelle. Their encounter had been brief, just 2 hours in a stuck elevator, but something about her lingered in his mind. Maybe it was the way she spoke with such passion, or maybe it was her bright smile despite the frustrating situation. But in a small town like this, if he was lucky, perhaps he'd see her again. A week later, his mother called, her voice as enthusiastic as ever. "Ethan, come home tonight. We're having a little party to celebrate Peter's promotion. You can't miss it." Ethan sighed. As usual, he wasn't interested, but he knew if he refused, his mother wouldn't let it go. He reluctantly agreed, planning to stay for 15 minutes, make small talk, and leave. The party was exactly as he expected. Loud, lively, filled with laughter and conversation. Ethan stood in the corner, nursing a glass of wine, waiting for the perfect moment to slip out unnoticed. But just as he was about to step through the door, a familiar voice called from behind, "Ethan, what are you doing here?" Ethan turned, and there she was, Isabelle, standing at the entrance with a bottle of wine in her hand, her amber eyes wide with surprise. Before he could respond, his mother appeared beside him, beaming with excitement. "Ethan, have you met our new neighbor? Isabelle just moved in next door." Ethan froze. He had thought their elevator encounter was just a fleeting moment, but now she was standing right in front of him, in the very house he had once been so eager to escape. Isabelle tilted her head, amusement dancing in her eyes. "Looks like I can't escape you either." Ethan chuckled, realizing for the first time that maybe staying at a family party wasn't the worst thing after all. Isabelle fit into the Cole family effortlessly, so much so that it caught Ethan off guard. Within an hour, she was deep in conversation with Uncle Mark about classic literature, discussing recipes with his mother, and even spinning around the yard in an impromptu dance with the little kids. Ethan watched from the sidelines, and for the first time in his life, he didn't feel the urge to leave. "You don't actually hate these parties, do you?" Isabelle teased when she caught his gaze. Ethan shrugged. "I'm just not used to them." But he couldn't deny it. Through Isabelle's eyes, everything seemed different. His family wasn't just loud, they were people who cared, who loved each other in their own way. After that night, Ethan found himself staying at gatherings a little longer, engaging in conversations he once ignored. At first, Ethan convinced himself it was just curiosity. Why did Isabelle enjoy these gatherings so much? Why did she fit in so effortlessly while he felt like an observer? But the more he watched, the more he saw what he had spent years ignoring. The quiet love woven between laughter, the warmth hidden beneath the noise. But the biggest change wasn't in his family. It was in Isabelle. They started meeting more often, not by accident, but because they both wanted to. Under the soft glow of a quiet cafe, they shared pieces of their lives, from unfinished dreams to unspoken fears. Isabelle talked about how she once feared leaving the big city for this small town. Ethan admitted that he once believed he'd never return here. They laughed, realizing they had both misjudged the places they belonged to. But even as Ethan grew comfortable around Isabelle, a part of him still hesitated. The closer he got to her, the more he feared that one day, all he would know how to do was walk away. And Isabelle saw it too. Ethan liked being around Isabelle. With her, he felt a sense of ease he had never known before, but that very feeling unsettled him. A part of him still believed that getting too close to someone would only lead to loss. One evening, as they walked through town, Isabelle suddenly turned to him. "Do you want to go on a weekend trip with me and a few friends? Just a short getaway to a beach town." Ethan froze, unsure how to respond. The thought of a trip with a group of people, a group of friends he didn't know, made him uneasy. "I'm busy," he said, his voice hesitant. Isabelle looked at him for a long moment before giving a small, knowing smile. "You're always busy." Ethan could tell she was disappointed, but he said nothing more. For the next few days, Isabelle didn't reach out to him, and strangely enough, Ethan felt empty. One evening, as he sat alone in his apartment, staring at his phone but too hesitant to text her, he realized something. He wasn't just avoiding a trip, he was avoiding her. And if he kept running, he would lose her forever. Ethan tried to push Isabelle out of his mind, but it was impossible. Every time he passed the cafe they used to meet at, he glanced inside, hoping to see her in their usual corner. Every time he visited his parents for dinner, he wondered if she would drop by, and when she didn't, he felt an unexpected emptiness. But even though he missed her, Ethan did nothing about it. He didn't realize just how big of a mistake he had made until he got a call from his mother one evening. "Ethan, your father, he had a heart attack." His heart stopped cold. He rushed to the hospital, panic gripping his chest, unable to think of anything except one thing: if something happened to his father, he would never forgive himself. But when he arrived, his father was stable, needing only rest. His mother sat by the hospital bed holding her husband's hand, while Ethan stood there, releasing a shaky breath of relief. And then he saw Isabelle. She was talking to his mother, as if she had been part of the family all along. Ethan froze. He had kept his distance, trying to protect himself from attachments. But Isabelle, she had never run away. She had been here, standing beside his family, even when he wasn't. For the first time, Ethan asked himself, "What have I been so afraid of?" When his father drifted to sleep, Isabelle stepped out into the hallway and Ethan followed. She turned to face him, her amber eyes not angry anymore, just patient and a little sad. "You're late, Ethan." Ethan took a deep breath. "I know." He met her gaze, and for the first time, he spoke the truth. "I was scared of belonging somewhere, scared that if I loved someone too much, I'd lose them. But then I realized, the more I ran, the more lost I felt." Isabelle was silent for a long moment. Then she smiled softly, then stopped running. And for the first time in his life, Ethan didn't want to run anymore. 2 weeks later, Ethan stood in front of his parents' house, a place he had always wanted to escape, but this time, he didn't feel out of place anymore. In the yard, his family was hosting a small gathering, laughter and chatter filling the air as always. But this time, Ethan wasn't standing on the sidelines. He stepped in, took off his coat, poured himself a glass of wine, and joined the conversation. His family seemed surprised to see him genuinely comfortable, but no one questioned it. And then Isabelle appeared beside him, smiling softly. "You actually stayed this time, huh?" Ethan looked around, taking in the warmth of his family, the feel of Isabelle's hand in his, and for the first time, he realized this was where he truly belonged. He smiled, squeezing her hand. "Sometimes happiness isn't about escaping, it's about embracing what's always been yours." Under the glow of string lights and laughter, Ethan knew he didn't want to run anymore. That autumn, Ethan took Isabelle to their favorite cafe, the place where they had spent hours sharing stories, the place where, for the first time, Ethan felt like he belonged. As they sat together, the warm glow of the lights reflected in Isabelle's amber eyes, and Ethan's heart pounded. He knew this was a moment he would remember forever. Taking a deep breath, he held her hand. "I used to think I was a misfit, always running away from everything, but then I realized, where I belong isn't a place, it's a person. And that person is you, Isabelle." Isabelle blinked, her heart skipping a beat. Ethan knelt down, pulling out a simple yet perfect ring, gleaming under the soft cafe lights. "Isabelle Carter, I spent my whole life building walls, thinking they would protect me. But then you walked in, and I realized home isn't something you build with bricks and steel. It's a feeling. It's the way you look at me like I'm worth staying for. It's every laugh, every late-night conversation, every moment I never want to forget. So, will you build a home with me? Not with walls, but with love, trust, and a lifetime together." Isabelle let out a soft laugh, though her voice trembled with emotion. "Ethan Cole, that is possibly the worst proposal I've ever heard, but I love you, and my answer is yes." On the day they married, the sky was clear, a gentle breeze drifting through the backyard of the Cole family home, a place Ethan once thought he could never belong to. His family laughed, friends surrounded them, and Isabelle, breathtaking in her white dress, walked toward him. As Ethan took her hand, Every doubt he had vanished completely. "I'm not afraid to belong anymore," he whispered as they exchanged vows. Isabelle squeezed his hand. "Good, because I wasn't planning on letting you run away." Under the golden hues of sunset, Ethan kissed her, knowing that this was where he would always belong. After the wedding, instead of staying in their small apartment in town, Ethan and Isabelle moved into the Cole family home. At first, Ethan had his doubts. Could he really adjust to the lively, bustling house? But soon he realized that everything felt different now. Now, every morning, he could have coffee with his mother in the kitchen, chat with his father about work. He was no longer the boy who hid in his room. He was part of the family, fully and completely. And Isabelle? She fit in so effortlessly, as if she had always been there. She helped his mother tend to the garden, read with his father in the evenings, and worked with Ethan to redesign a small room into a shared workspace for the both of them. One evening, as the family gathered around the dinner table, Ethan's father looked at him, his eyes filled with pride. "Ethan, you've become a man, and more importantly, you've learned that family isn't just where you're born, it's where you choose to stay." Ethan squeezed Isabelle's hand, smiling. He had spent his whole life running, but now, in this house, with his family and the woman he loved, Ethan knew he had finally found his true home, and that was Ethan's journey, one of self-discovery, love, and finding where he truly belonged. If you believe that family and love have the power to change lives, leave a comment "Love Family" below to spread this beautiful message. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another heartfelt story. See you in the next video.